Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Waste Hauler Management during COVID-19. I'm Christina Grace, CEO at Foodprint Group. We partner with food, hospitality, and corporate office teams to eliminate waste. We're very lucky to work with restaurants, hotel groups, food retailers, and food service operations around the country to reduce food waste, eliminate single-use dishware and disposable items, and reuse and recycle more. This is our second in our COVID-19 webinar series that we pulled together to address questions we're hearing from our clients and friends in the food community during this crisis. Our first session was maximizing food donations. The webinar recording and related resources are available on our website at www.foodprintgroup.com. If you have any questions related to that, you can reach back to us directly. We are really eager to work with clients to make matches with emergency food partners during this time. Today, we're here to discuss waste hauler management in the current environment. And then our final two sessions are takeout and delivery during COVID-19 at 3 p.m. on April 15th and planning for the food safety new normal and how sustainability aligns with best safety practices, which will occur on April 22nd, also at 3 p.m. We hope you join us for these conversations and please spread the word. Before I dive in, some quick Zoom business. This session will be recorded, or before we dive in, this session will be recorded and the audio and video recording will be available for download from our website and YouTube. All attendees will be muted for the entire time, but please share your questions via the webinar Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen so that we can answer them either today or anything that might be outside of today's focus or that we can answer. We will definitely follow up and post answers within our webinar resources on our website after the fact. So the purpose of today's session is to help businesses adjust hauling services and operating procedures to manage costs, react to schedule changes and current hauler constraints, and limit the risk of workers who are handling our wasted materials right now. Waste hauling has been characterized as an essential service. It's critical to our public health. So it goes on during COVID, thankfully. And we recognize that nationally and globally, there are macro interruptions within the recycling sector and much bigger things going on. But today we are really gonna focus on on our customer needs in terms of understanding how to handle the changes in this current environment with their haulers and really how we can care for our waste sector workers at this time. While we don't have current statistics on how COVID is affecting workers within the commercial hauling sector, we do know here in New York City that New York City Department of Sanitation has confirmed 335 cases of COVID-19 amongst members of its workforce, including one loss as of this Tuesday. So along with helping food and hospitality businesses keep moving forward on their work, we really want to use this call to share ways customers can help protect people on the front lines right now. So thank you again for joining us. Today we're lucky to have Dan Wright, who is Secretary and Treasurer at Teamsters 813, joining us to talk about worker issues. The format today will be that Laura Rosenshine, Foodprint's co-founder and the leader of our services development and delivery, will walk through some overview slides and resources, and then she will organize Q&A with Dan to talk about what workers are experiencing right now, and then we're going to dive into a broad Q&A that I will run at the end, and we'll open it up to questions from our participants. So thank you all again, and Laura, dive on in.
Great, thank you. Hi everyone. So we're going to fly through some slides. Definitely, like Christina said, please jump in your questions and answer your questions that we can answer. And here we go. So how are haulers affected? Haulers are affected very similarly to a lot of other businesses during this time. There's suspended service for businesses that have temporarily closed. There's service reductions for businesses that need fewer pickups. And there are service changes that maybe businesses want to suspend some of their elected services or just alter service. There's also canceled service. Unfortunately, we are hearing from some of our hauler relationships that some businesses have decided just to close their doors forever, especially in the restaurant industry where margins can be really, really small. They just can't weather this storm, which is very sad. And then also kind of just like every other business, there are payment issues associated with it. Whether or not vendors are getting paid promptly is affecting haulers as well. One particular hauler I spoke with, this was in late March, he was like, I have 600 emails I need to deal with today. So everyone is, right when this hit, was going through a lot of crazy. So how are truck drivers and workers affected? As Christina mentioned, we have Dan on the phone who's going to speak a little bit more specifically to this, but just to outline a couple of basic things, they're definitely suffering from a reduced number of shifts and or layoffs. Certainly the obvious increased risk to health. There's new protocols, and there also was a shifting scenario regarding paid sick leave and paid sick leave policies, given the essential service that haulers are providing. So waste set out suggestions. Again, we're going to hear more from Dan on this when it comes to worker safety and things that we can do. But one of the things Foodprint wanted to highlight was that if you are a larger business, one of the obvious things we can do is get the waste collectors in and out of your business as quickly as possible. I guess by in and out, I mean at the curbside for the most part. But in order to do that, one of the options might be that we suggest talking with your hauler about during this time is if you could increase the number of containers or just start utilizing containers. As you can see in this picture, if a hauler is going to collect this material, they're going to drag that whole container over to the back of the truck, and they're going to use a winch to dump those containers into the back of the truck, which means that they don't have to touch all of those individual bags. So if you are a larger business, please consider that having that conversation with your hauler as soon as possible. How do I adjust my service level temporarily? As a lot haulers, our recommendation is to always contact haulers by phone and email as soon as you know what changes you want to make, or as soon as you feel like you need to discuss your options for those changes. If you are going to contact them by phone, you do want to make sure that you have the following information ready if you don't have a direct line to your account representative, and you have to go more through a customer service number. So things such as your service address, the service change request. And we have a bullet point here that talks about maybe ask them if they have suggestions. They might have other businesses that have reduced service, and they might have reduced the number of times a week they are putting a recycling truck out on the road. So you might want to try and align your services with other clients that they are servicing, or just general reductions that they've made during this time. I think it's also really important at this time to mention that you also want to temporarily renegotiate your fees. As probably everyone knows, waste hauling services are quoted and paid for just like a lot of other services. They provide a service and you pay for that based on frequency, volume, materials being collected, and service frequency. So you definitely want to bring this point up as soon as possible. In addition, if you are making, if you are thinking of making temporary service adjustments, you certainly want to let them know that as soon as possible. Like, you could just stop putting out trash, but if you don't let your hauler know that you're making a service adjustment, they're going to continue to charge you as if they were before, which will be quite disappointing when you get your next invoice. And then the last bullet point here is to ask them to respond and confirm. Like I said, otherwise you'll be charged the full amount. Everyone is inundated right now with probably phone calls and emails, but haulers especially. And so you might have to follow up once or twice by phone. You might have to follow up by email. It's definitely why we recommend sending an email, because you'll have that time and date stamp on it so that you can refer back to if you do need to talk about renegotiation in the future. I do have a note here that says, that came from one of our haulers, that some clients have adjusted all the way down to 2 days a week per particular waste collection. So you might want to bring that up as a possibility when you do talk to your hauler. Okay, how do I determine the service levels I need to know? This is a Foodprint suggestion. Most businesses will know how much reduction they are seeing in their normal production, and they will likely be able to associate a percentage with that. So an example here is if you're reducing your production by 60%, maybe you suggest a rate reduction of the equivalent of 60%. There's absolutely no guarantee that the hauler will agree to that, but it was the reduction in production was kind of the percentage that we felt like might be most appropriate kind of across the restaurant industry. And it might be something that's easily quantifiable for you. So it could be a good starting point. You certainly also want to consider the reduction in the days of operation. If you went from 7-day-a-week collection to 3-day-a-week collection. And then you also need to consider on-site storage, especially for businesses in New York City. Storage is an issue. So definitely consider how much waste you're generating, what kind of storage you have for it, and making sure that it doesn't impede passageways and things like that, so that it's convenient still for your employees to operate. And then we're going to go into this a little bit more on the next slide, but another Foodprint suggestion is that you could track your waste production for 1 week. Now, we wouldn't necessarily recommend that if you see your business production levels fluctuating on a week-to-week basis, but we are kind of in the heart of COVID right now. I think most people are seeing us staying in this state for at least another 2 to 3 weeks. Doing 1 week's worth of waste tracking could help you renegotiate an entire month's bill, which could lead to a good amount of savings. So in the next slide, this is an example of a Foodprint weekly waste tracker. As Christina said, this deck will be made available on our website probably tomorrow or the next day, and you can download a PDF of this tracking sheet here. The way that we use this tracking sheet is we count. We count the number of bundles, we count the number of bags, the number of both black and clear bags hitting the curb that we set out for the hauler to collect every day of the week. If you are not setting stuff out on a Wednesday, then I wouldn't count them. I would count them over on the Thursday or the Friday, depending on when you set them out. But this is a very basic sheet and tool that we wanted to make available. Obviously, if there is not a stream that you are source separating into right now, such as if you've halted recycling or if you've halted compost, just don't utilize those lines. We have a note here that to remember that New York City sets waste collection costs. You're gonna see those on the second to last slide. But you have as a business paying for a service, you still have a right to a fair price during this time of crisis. Okay, so what if I experience issues with collection during this time? Again, we recommend contacting by phone and email as soon as an issue has occurred. Not only will you have a record of this, but the hauler could possibly be able to come clean it up before the next service day, especially if you've reduced service days down to 2 days a week. You might not be able to hold on to that material, and they might be able to put you on the route for that night, even though you're not scheduled for that night. The next note here is to make a note of the issue in a consistent place. I hope that there aren't a tremendous amount of service issues during this time, but it's just really hard to say. And even though we suggest sending an email, if after a month goes by and you had 10 service issues, you're going to be pretty annoyed that you have to go through your email and re-jot down what those service issues are just to renegotiate with the hauler. So we recommend, even after you send the email or make the phone call, to write it down in a consistent place. This can be something as simple as a Word document or an Excel sheet. We have a Google form linked here that is open for public use. It outlines a number of the details, your service address, the type of issue that you experienced. Please feel free to use that. If at the end of this, you want a record of all of the things that you put in this form, all you'll have to do is email Foodprint Group, tell us the name of your business, and we'll filter that Google form response to your responses, and we'll get them right back to you. But it does do the timestamp and the date stamp automatically for you, so we do think it's pretty easy to use. We also have linked up a printable sheet that you can use as well if you'd rather use something on paper. And then I just wanted to make a note to say that, remember, this is a hard time for every business. Let's not expect perfect service issues or immediate credits on missed pickups. However, keeping track of these issues will help you renegotiate and save some money when things are back to normal. Okay, this slide is very overwhelming. I'm well aware of that. And I'm just going to give you a quick overview of this slide. Basically, what's important to note about understanding your waste bill is that there's a tremendous amount of variation in how each private waste hauler delivers an invoice. The 3 boxes kind of in the middle of the screen are clips from 3 different waste hauling companies. So you can see that there's inconsistency. It would be great if they were all consistent, but we're just in New York City and probably across the country, we're just not at that state yet. So there's going to be a lot of variation. Some things that you're going to notice on your waste bill is that certain waste streams and their quantities and their costs might be lumped together. A good example of that is if you just take that top line of that first row where it says 12, 12, 19, 84, 8,400, and then it says pounds of putrescible waste. Foodprint Group very often sees waste hauling invoices that just have this one singular line item, pounds of putrescible waste, even though we know that the waste hauler is also coming by and collecting compost, collecting recycling, and collecting cardboard. If you only have one line item on your invoice, the tracking and the renegotiation might be additionally challenging. But if you need extra help with that communication, please do feel free to reach out to us. If you do have a waste hauler invoice that is broken down into more line items, the putrescible waste, the recycling, and the cardboard, you'll probably have a little bit of an easier time using that tracking sheet. What I want to outline here, and again, this will be made available, is that you have quantity and you have basically the cost per that quantity, which is what makes up the cost per month all the way on the right in the purple box. I don't think I have enough time to really run through this, but what you'll see at the bottom of this screen is that I tried to outline the steps to take in order to understand the amount that you are paying per pickup. And that's really an important factor here, because you're reducing your collection days, but your waste has reduced in volume and in weight. So all of those 3 factors are really important when you're trying to understand your waste bill. I'm guessing some questions are going to come in on this on Christina's end. And I don't necessarily know if it makes sense to run through this, like I said, in detail, but please do revert back to this after this webinar, and please do reach out if you have questions. The one other thing I really want to point out is most line items on a waste bill are categorized by yard or by pound. And you can see that in that middle section where it says yards per month. But then in that lower section, you see trash service in 100 pounds, excuse me, in the yellow box. It's really important to look at those two factors, the yards or the pounds, when you're actually trying to understand your waste bill. And just to make it more confusing, if you do have compost service is actually usually billed on a per bin rate. They don't do it by yard, they don't do it by pound. A hauler will basically say, if you have 3 compost bins on site and we are collecting those 5 days a week, rough math will tell you that we are collecting 15 a week and 60 a month. So compost toters can be a little bit more confusing. So definitely take that into account. And this is I promise the last thing I'll bring up on this slide. If you look at the cost per pickup, that bullet point number 2, you see it divided by 4.33. 4.33 is the number of weeks in a month. Haulers don't just use a division of by 4 as weeks per month, they use the 4.33. So if your math isn't going well, just remember that that division is 4.33 and not just 4 if you're getting down to the cost per week or cost per day. Okay, moving on. This is my last slide. So we spoke to the Business Integrity Commission. Again, this is unique to New York City. What we've outlined here is a couple things. The first is to, the number one recommendation from BIC was to speak with your waste hauler and negotiate your rate with them as soon as possible. This might be a temporary rate for 1 month that you've worked out with them, and maybe after 1 month it goes back to the regular rate, assuming that COVID has settled down. But definitely get on the phone with them and renegotiate that. The next piece here is outlining what the maximum rates are allowed by New York City carters. So this is a reference point for you. So if you look at your bill and you see that you're being charged more than $13 per 100 pounds of waste, that's a red flag. And again, to add to the confusion of the math from the last slide, converting bag counts, which is a tracking sheet that we gave you, into yards, there's a conversion there at the bottom. Most restaurants use a 23 gallon waste bin, the Slim Jims. However, your bag might actually be 40 gallons that lines that bin. So I would suggest using that 30 gallon bag division in order to do that math. The last two things I will point out here is that if you do have major service issues or a really hard time dealing with your hauler, you can always file a complaint. We have linked that on the right. And then also we've linked on the left the conversion info in more detail. I think that is, okay, waste set out suggestions. Great, we're getting to Dan. Dan, I'd love to turn it over to you at this point. Christina has a couple of questions, unless you just feel more comfortable diving into the suggestions that you have that our restaurants and people on this call can do to make it better for those essential employees during this time.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to help out in any way that I can. I just want to say about the slide that we had with some of my comments. The thing that we really want to be ultra careful of at this particular time, even more so now than ever, is I want to keep people from getting hurt in the workplace. The last thing we need to do is to have somebody have to go to the emergency room. So if we could be conscious of, watching sharp instruments and things of that nature, just trying to make the workers as safe as possible and keep them from getting injured.
Hi, Dan. This is Chris Grace. Thank you again for joining us. I think before we dive into a few of the questions, could you just tell us a little bit about the role that Teamsters 813, your organization, is playing in terms of worker safety, so everybody on the phone understands?
Yeah, so we are the largest union that represents private sanitation workers in New York City, and we've always prided ourselves on trying to make safety an emphasis at all times. We are consistently speaking with members and employers to see that they are properly trained and have the right equipment to do the job efficiently and be as safe as possible.
That's great, and thank you for the tips for our restaurant clients in terms of how they're doing set out and managing waste for worker safety. What are you hearing from your members out on the front lines in terms of things that are harder to deal with right now, or things that businesses should be aware of?
Well, I think, in the initial onset of what's going on, there was difficulties because there was a lot of confusion. Nobody was really getting a complete message as to, how is this spreading and what do we need to do to stop the spread. So once that information became funneled out in a more clear and concise and efficient way, I think, people got a little bit more at ease with the situation and realized that, we don't all need to be gearing up in hazmat suits from head to toe in order to perform our jobs effectively. So we've had, numerous conversations with our members about, social distancing and, wearing protective rubber gloves and things of that nature. And the message is out, and I think it's been accepted, and, people are able to function in an efficient way at this point.
That's great, thanks. I know we do have some of our partners in the waste hauling sector on the webinar, so we'd love to hear from you. Like, what are some of the best practices that you're seeing from commercial waste businesses right now to address COVID?
Well, actually, we're seeing a reduction in the volume is number one. I mean, not that impacts anything to do with the disease on the worker end, but it makes the job a little bit easier, not to be overburdened with huge piles of trash. Things are moving along. I mean, the employers, the businesses seem to be doing the right thing. We're seeing bags tied properly, cardboard bundled properly. Those are all important things that continue to make everything work smoothly and efficiently. The only other thing I guess I can suggest is try not to make things too heavy. Don't overload them. If your team is struggling with getting waste out to the curb, then you have to envision that the sanitation worker is going to struggle severely as well, getting it up into the truck.
That's great. That's very helpful. I mean, are there any maybe bigger best practices in terms of paid sick leave or other things that you're seeing? Are you seeing any shifts in those areas when it comes to commercial waste management workers?
We seem to be doing okay with the sick leave. I do envision probably, within the next couple of weeks, we're going to have to, deal with the potential rules for, COVID leave versus regular sick leave. But, as it stands right now, the employers seem to be cooperative. They want to keep their employees safe, and if there is an issue where an employee needs to be out of work because they're not feeling well, they're certainly being able to be granted the time. So I think we're okay with that right now.
That's great. We just received a quick note from one of our hauler partners saying they're using fogger to clean each truck cab at the end of every day and keeping drivers in the same truck to eliminate any cross-contamination, and staggering times to spread workers out and improve social distancing during work, which is interesting. Is this something that you're seeing pretty broadly?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The staggered work schedules, and trying to, keep too many people from interacting with each other is definitely being done, and I think it's effective.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'd love to open up to questions for Laura or Dan from our participants. Do we have any questions? I'm not seeing any open in our Q&A. If you have questions, type them on into the Q&A section. I can also see them in chat, but I think the Q&A button's a little easier.
Adam has one from, I think, more so directed at Dan, which is what's the job loss that you've seen from the local 813?
Unfortunately, we have had some layoffs. We have in the private sanitation industry, I would say, we are probably above 100 to 150 people that have been laid off. We've also seen a significant amount of layoff within the demolition industry. Those are the individuals that haul away the large containers full of demolition debris. That industry's been hit very hard because of the shutdown of construction. So.
We have another question. Are we hearing anything about recycling, collection, and processing during this time? What about compost? We are definitely here in New York City. Our clients are still getting collection of all the streams. We are hearing that things vary a lot, city to city around the country. I know, Dan, do you have any comments?
No, I mean, as far as we're concerned, everything is rolling along normally. I mean, just the volume is greatly reduced. That's what our people are seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can also add that the compost routes have been reduced to 3 or 2 days a week. And I think, Christina, we were going to touch on just confirming that holding compost for 24 or 48 hours is allowed. Our recommendation is to not move it into your refrigerated storage unless that refrigerated storage is designated for waste storage only. But we definitely do recommend tying off, making sure that your material is in a bag and that bag is tied off inside the compost bin to reduce, fruit flies and things like that. But it's more common everywhere else but New York to not have compost collection on a daily basis. So just know that it is done in a lot of other cities. Obviously, New York has more frequent collection because of our limited storage capacity.
Yes, we have a question we cannot answer, but it's something that we're paying close attention to. Do you have an estimated number of restaurants that have had to close permanently in New York City? We just think that this is such a moving target, and that we're just not gonna know until the dust settles. And there are going to be restaurant groups that continue to be open, but not all sites will reopen. There's just so much. We're going to see a lot, we know, in the food and hospitality sector, and we're just sitting here crossing our fingers that it's less than we think it will be, based on how hard things are right now for people. We're crossing our fingers, and we know that there are lots of groups. There's the Roar Coalition, for those in the restaurant space that haven't looked that up, we'll include a link to that here, that's really advocating for more supports to help keep our restaurants open and workers paid. And obviously the Federal CARES Act, where so many restaurants meet the bill, or restaurant groups meet the bill as a small business for some of these grants and loans, and forgivable loans. So we'll include those links too. I know everybody's getting information from so many different places on these right now, but we'll keep it coming at you because we want as many of the folks in the restaurant and hospitality community to take advantage of those opportunities. Let me see, do we have any questions? I'm gonna give a couple seconds for any more questions from our audience. Well, I don't see any more. So we will, if something comes to mind after the fact, please reach out to info@foodprintgroup.com. We'll include that information in the slide deck too, and we will help to answer your questions. Anything that was not covered but has to do with the waste management sector, we have a great community here in New York City of businesses that are eager to answer your questions and help keep things moving. So we will reach out to find answers. And again, there's a lot in the news, Waste Dive and resources that are really talking about the macro issues right now in waste and recycling, that we're happy to share. Dan, do you have any final takeaways you'd like to leave with our restaurant clients and waste sector participants on the call?
I just want to, ask everybody to stay safe out there and, be patient. I hope that we can get back into reality at some point very soon with a normal world. I mean, things are obviously going to be different, but let's do what we can to get there as soon as possible. And in the meantime, stay safe. And if you see a sanitation worker, say thank you. It'll be appreciated.
Thank you so much, Jan. Thanks, Laura. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope you can join us next week to talk takeout and delivery during COVID-19. And stay tuned for the summary of the webinar, which we will post tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.